So he says, Ukenoida, like it's known, Sheyesh Beis Bechines B'Keser. There are two levels in Keser. It's brought down what's comes down from the lower level of the Ein Sof and the higher level. So there's two levels in Keser. Atik and Arich, we say. Atik is the lowest of the levels of the Maitzil, and Arich is the first level of the creation. Kuneda sheyesh beis bechinas b'keser. Bechinas achroino shebamatzil u'bechinas Atik. The last step, the last level in the Maitzil, the one who separates from one who just separates it from, is the level of Atik. U'bechinas rishoino l'natzolim, and the first level for those who have been Netzal, that's u'bechinas Arich Ampin. That's the level of Arich Ampin. So Atik and Arich, the two levels in Keser. The Atik hu bechinas primis. Atik is the inner. The Arich Ampin bechinas chitzonius. That is the external level. Hamechase v'choifef al bechinas primis shaboy, that covers and hovers over the inner that's in it. So the external has the internal in it, but the external is the cover and hovers around the primis. So what does this translate? This level of Arich Ampin versus the level of Atik, that's Rotzin and Tainug. The Rotzin is the will of Hashem, that's the external, that's what Hashem wants you to do. In the Rotzin, there is hidden a Tainug. A Tainug is the pleasure, the delight is the Atik. V'u'bechinas Rotzin ha'elyon, shaboy melubesh oineg ein sof. That is the supreme will, in that is dressed up the delight of the infinite. So when we say the delight of the infinite, we actually mean infinitely. That, as we say, there is no reason. There is no end. That is the level of the reasons of the mitzvahs. Shenemar al haTorah, that it says about the Torah, it's greater than the measure of land. So you have Torah and mitzvahs. Mitzvahs come from Ratzon. That's the actual will of Hashem to do the mitzvah. Torah is the reasoning, is the logic, is the oineg, that's the pleasure. That's the two levels. The level of Pnimius and Chitzonis, the level of Tainug and the level of Ratzon. Okay, now we also said what we said before, that in Atzilus there is Milmaila Lamato, so the Keser goes from there, then it comes to Malchus. Then we say that from Malchus it actually becomes the Keser. Because why? Because in Malchus, which is the Rotzin of Hashem, over there is hidden the Tainug and the higher level of Keser, which is hidden Dafke in the Rotzin, which is Malchus. Malchus, and this is Malchus. Within Atzilus, Malchus is the Asiya. That's the action of Asiya. Asher Bohu Ma'isa mitzvahs, over there in Malchus is the act of mitzvahs, because we said before, the king commands, that's the mitzvah, the commandments, Amelach, the Malchus, that's the king. He nikras Keser. So we say that she is called Keser. Why do we call Malchus Keser? So we say the Hainu Sheshon Davke Shom Daike, over there specifically, Mizgale Rotzin Ha'elyonim Ha'oineg HaMelubash Boi. Over there is revealed the supreme will together with the delight which is within the Rotzin. V'shikosu b'mokom achar b'biur ha'posik mimon ha'chulu b'soifei b'pirush af asisiv u'b'pirush Reva Yisrael ein shom. Hine ha-mitzvahs, so that's why I do, because it's the Skala. In the mitzvahs is the Skala, the Tainug, the idea that is higher than the Rotzen, even the level of Tainug, level of Atik. In mitzvahs, hein b'soif ha-maisa. So mitzvahs are in the end, they're actions. Aval ha-Torah, ibchinas chokhmah. Torah is chokhmah, which is chokhmah ha-mitzvah. So the maisa, the mitzvah is the action. Torah is the wisdom, because you have to know how to do the maisa. The Torah tells you how to do the maisa. So that's the logic behind the mitzvah. That's the idea how to do the mitzvah. So the difference between mitzvahs and Torah is a difference between maisa and chokhmah, between action and the wisdom of the Torah, which is chokhmah ha-mitzvah, eich tiya hechsher mitzvah. That is the wisdom of the mitzvah. How should the mitzvah be prepared? Kidei sheyumshach bo oineg ha'elyon, so that the oineg ha'elyon should be extended in it. So v'lharei hikroiva yoser li ein sof. Torah is closer to the Ein Sof, because that's the level of Chokhmah, which is closer to the Ein Sof. And v'lochein, b'Chokhmah is beriru. And that's why by Chokhmah, things are sorted out. Kine gufa mitzvah heime noiga. The mitzvah itself is from noiga. Say, for example, kimoi, the mitzvahs itself, in other words, we do the mitzvahs, and we do the mitzvahs of tzitzis. It comes from a physical, from an animal. An animal is for klippas noiga, because you could have taivas for the animal. So yeah, it's not. So you're taking the mitzvah, you're taking from the other side, and you have to be mevarer it. But the chokhmah brings down from the level of oineg. The mitzvahs itself are for noiga. Say, for example, kimoi tzitzis shel tzemer. You take tzitzis, you make it out of wool. The wool you make from what? Mikvosim. You make it from sheep. That you eat the sheep. So the fact that you eat the sheep, when you eat the sheep, you can have a taiva. You can klipas noiga. You can have a yesh, bam taiva, klipas noiga. There can be a desire, which is from klipas noiga, to eat a gross eating, which means not l'shem shamayim. You can eat, so that comes klipas noiga. So that means basically that mitzvahs are somehow connected also to noiga. So that's in a lower level, as opposed to ha-chokhmah. If we talk about the level of chokhmah, which is the level of Torah, over there it says T'chaye ba'aleha. That vitalizes those who master it, which means liyos hashros v'amshochas oineg ha'elyon b'mitzvahs. That brings down, that this should be the resting and bringing down the level of oineg into the mitzvahs. As we say, Godel Talmud. What's the great in the Talmud? That it brings to the mitzvahs, meaning the learning brings down the oineg into the mitzvahs. Just like by a person, the order way it goes is first it dresses up the intellect in your thinking about it and talking about it, and then it brings down in action. So the same thing is, the Torah is the Chokhmah part of it. It's dressed up the Ein Sof in the Chokhmah, And then later on in the mitzvahs, it comes down into action. So basically, it says from here and on, her husband is obligated to feed her. Basically, before she gets married, the woman, it's the father's responsibility to feed his daughter. When she's engaged, it's still the father's. But once she gets married, now it becomes the husband's responsibility to feed her. And basically, that once it comes down to the level of Malchus Zoh, which is Zoh V'Nukva, which is male, the husband and the wife, the Ishul Baila, the level of Malchus is considered to be the Eshes Chayil, the woman, and the Zoh, that's the Nukva, and the Zoh is the Baila, the husband. So now the Baila is supposed to feed her, meaning, he's going to explain why now, but the Baila means Zoh has to feed Malchus. The Hamshocha comes from Zoh to Malchus. Shashpos has Malchus, why they Zoh, that the flow of Malchus comes through Zoh, through Zeirampi. Shah Malchus u'bechina sihara. Malchus is like the moon. The moon doesn't have its own shine. U'mekabeles mishimsha. It receives it from the sun. The sun is reflected in the moon. He's Zoh. That's b'chinas ha-Torah. So the Torah, which is Zoh, illuminates, shines into Malchus. So what does it mean at this point? Because we say after the marriage, we said now the husband has to, which means after it comes down to Malchus, then Zoh has to be mashpia. This is when it comes down in Malchus, which is mekan ve'elech, which means achar nisuin. After the marriage, it has to be mamshich. Ukemoshe kosu v'zoyer bereishis daf memtes amud aleph al posik. So over there it says like this: Vayiven Hashem elikim es hatzela. Over there it says like the Eibishter built. The Eibishter took the tzela, he took one of the sides, the rib of Adam, and he created Chava. So it says Hashem built, Hashem elikim built es hatzela, the side, and then Hashem brought her to Adam, became his wife. So he says the ho avaim is takinula. So you have the chokhma bina. Even Hashem zakela. Once you have avaim chokhma bina that have been prepared, so then by yiviyah el ha'adam, so then Hashem brings it to the man, which means that now has to be mekan ve'elech. So from here and on, he has to, the flow has to come from Zoh, which means that in essence, the source of Malchus, Shoyrish Mitzi also, that comes, the source of the Mitzias of Malchus comes from Ratzon Elyon, comes from higher. But after Avo was Misakin to have the level of Malchus as it is in Atzilus, so then the Zoh, then Vayim Hashem said Zoh is Mashpia into Malchus. Basically, we're saying like this, that Malchus in essence has a source which is higher than from Keser. That's the level of Ratzon. That's why it's in this gala in the Maisa Mitzvahs. Also the level of Tainuk, which is dressed up in the Ratzon. So, but after, in a revealed level, Malchus comes afterwards. Malchus gets the Hamashpoah from the level of Zoh. Zoh is Mashpia to Malchus. But that's why Malchus can become also a Keser to Zoh, because the source of its own will comes from the level of Ratzon. So we can give. So the wife of the Chayil becomes the crown of her husband, which means she could be mashpia to the husband. Why? Because she has her own shoydish, which is from a higher place. There are two levels in Malchus. You have the parts of Hachitzoni, the external face, upartsuv pnimi. Yeah, what are you going to do? Moker b'chinas hamanoira, or is that's what it says? So okay, there's no flow over here, but basically what it means in the source of Malch, which is the level of Menorah, as it says in Likutei Torah. He's going to explain soon how in the level of Malchus is also in the Menorahs of Kula from the Haftorah that we read in Zechariah on Parshas Behalosecha. He's going to explain soon, but I mean here there's like words missing in the. He's just telling you the Torah. But anyway, so we're talking about there are two levels in Malchus. There is the external level of Malchus, which is a makabel from the level of Zoh. Then we have the inner face of Malchus, which is actually becomes a mashpia eschateres baila. So v'ayim beitz chaim shar tikkun hanukva perik zayin uperik beis oishvites v'ayim ashekosu meinyan parsiv apnimis the Malchus bebiur ach posik achasi yonosi v'ayin zoyin chelik beis daf yudaldom and beis. So he says v'shom. And over there, in the parts of Hapnimi, Malchus shebichinas hamitzvahs koidmim l'Torah. Over there, Malchus, which is the mitzvahs, comes before Torah, because Torah is chokhmah, and mitzvahs is keser because it has the pnimis in it, in the level of Malchus, in the parts of Hapnimi. Then we have the level of Gula al Rosha. We said from the Torah, Gula al Rosha, meaning Hibchinas, his boinanus, that's the level of reflection. The branches of the menorah is 7. That's the level of Zoh, the level of the Midas. We're talking about the Midas of Malchus. The Midas of Malchus, that's the 7 branches of the menorah, which is Zoh and Malchus. But in the description of the menorah in Zechariah, it says there is a Gula al Rosha. On the top of it is this Gula. What is this Gula? How does that translates? That is the level of reflection. How do we get these Abba v'Yira? How do we get the Midos that comes through reflection? As it says, Eim Habonim. That becomes the mother. Eim Habonim Smecha becomes the mother of the sons. What are the sons? The sons are the 7 Midos, the 6 Midos of Malchus. V'Shiva Neireseh Eim Habonim. And the 7 Neireseh, those are the children. Shiva Roim, the 7 shepherds, Zayin Midas. Those represent the 7 emotions, which we say, L'cho Hashem Agdula V'Agvur V'Atiferes. This is the Midas. So that comes all from the level of his bonus. But the further it says over there, by the next pasuk, it says Ushnei Zeisim Aleho. 2 olives were on top. What does it mean the 2 olives are on top? Which he says that there is a higher madrega that you get from the level of olives. Simply, the oil comes from the zayis, but in order for the zayis to come, you got to squeeze to get the oil. You got to squeeze it, and it's bitter. Zayis yesh boy merirus. The olive has bitterness. And that covers on the oil which is in it. You got to grind it in a mill and you got to crush it until you get the Shem. What is this idea in Avodas Hashem that you have this bitterness and you have to crush it to get the oil from this Zeisim? That's the that when you suppress the other side, then the glory of Hashem comes down from a higher place. In other words, in order to bring down into the midas, into everything, for a higher place, you have to have iskafia. You have to push yourself and to do against your one. That's why it is only the Yidden that is going to explain that receive the Torah and the mitzvahs, and not the Malachim, because the Malachim don't have a Yetzer Hara. They don't have to crush. They don't have to push themselves. Everything is good. But if everything is good, you can't draw down from a higher place. In order, if you want to get the shemen, you want to get the oil, you want to get the hidden, you have to crush the olive, and only then you can get it. But in kadiskafia sitra achra istalik gekore. Pirush istalik. What does it mean istalik? Shenimshach memokim gavoya yosef. That it comes from a higher place. V'lochein leinitna Torah lemalach hashos. And that's why the Torah was not given to the angels that serve Hashem. Besides the reason that the Yidden come from the inner and the Malachim are from the external, further, because by a person below, he has to force himself against his nature and everything that he does. And therefore, that it comes from then a higher place. Because when you push yourself and you crush and you overcome, you miskafya, the yisitra achra, you get the yikara, you get from a higher place. And that's why the Yidden get it from a higher place. They bring down a higher place in the level of Torah mitzvahs. Be'eretz lo yizruah. The pasuk says that they followed Hashem in an eretz. In the eretz loy zruah. It was sown with loy. Loy, there is no. Loy daike. It says specifically loy. Which means Torah mitzvahs have yes and no. Because that's a level which comes down in yes and no. But the level of the Yidden that they get from is in a level from low where there is no yes and no. Everything is higher. Ki yudke im shmi, because when you have the name, letters of the name of Hashem of Yudke, and you add it together with the name of Shmi, Zeh Shmi le'olam, Zeh Zichr der v'der. So Shmi with Yudke, who Shin Samachei, that comes out to 365. Those are the prohibitions. So that's the level of Yudke. And you take the level of Vavke, V'zichri in Vavke, that equals Uramach. So the name of Hashem is Yudke comes down through the mitzvahs. L'shabasi a mitzvah shebichinas hein. That when you do a mitzvahs, which is in the level, the act of a mitzvah is yes, which means you're doing something. It's not a negative. Negative is not doing. A mitzvah say is to do. That is level of hein. Nimshach davar sheyiyeh b'islapshus hasogya. So then you can get something which dresses up. You can get it. Masha'enke b'bchinas loy. Nimshach davar she'enei mislabesh b'bchinas hein klal. Rak b'chinas loy. Then it only dresses up in a level of not doing. In other words, you can't do it. You can't get it. You can only get it by not doing it. Kolaymar, as to say, shebezelu mazeh im efshar lahamshich klal. That in the opposite you can't bring, because since it, I guess if it's yes, you can bring it down, divert it, do it the wrong way. But if it's no, you're not doing it, you can't bring it down to the negative, because it's the mitzvah is of not doing it. Move on. So therefore, this is the opposite. For in other words, no negativity, because there's no no hamshacha there. This is very high. So basically, he's saying that the hamshacha of loy, which is higher than in action, is only shaykhs to the yid. V'zelo shaykh rak kim b'bnei Yisrael chulu. Only the yid can be mamshalat. Masha'enken hamalachim, as opposed to the malachim. Ima yesh lehem guf. They also have a body, but ein haguf master klal. Their body doesn't block at all. So, baragam haguf. So it means basically they don't have any shaykhs to do his kafia, the malachim, to have to, not because they don't have a body that blocks. But the body says kodesh of the body of the malach, which is ruchais. Let's say it's ruchais, different level. That's why Torah was given after Yitzis Mitzrayim. Had to have the level of bitush, the level of like the zayis to crush it, and after it's Mitzrayim. So inyan b'rachamecha harabim shal yidei bitush ma'oder yudgim mitzrachim. So basically, through the crushing, the bitush, then you get to the higher level of yudgim mitzrachim. That's why we say b'rachamecha harabim. You get the great rachim. Shein oides al yonim l'maylam and hashtalshlus. Those are lights that are higher than hashtalshlus. So basically, what he's trying to say is that we have the Meloira, we have the Hamshoches and the Moich and the Midas, but then you have the higher level that you can reach through the level. You can just do Torah mitzvahs, but you can do Torah mitzvahs through crushing yourself, through forcing yourself, so then you're mamshich from the level of Kesed. Okay, we'll leave it here. We'll continue mitzvah tomorrow.